Good morning. We'd like to welcome you to another edition of the Sunday School Review. This week's Sunday School lesson is entitled, God Chooses the Younger Twin, and is taken from Genesis, the 25th chapter, verses 19b through 34. And we are continuing our lesson with Abraham here and the beginning of the Hebrew nation. In our study here, it starts at verse 19b, and it says, Abraham beget Isaac. By the way, there are three outlines. The first outline is the unexpected declaration. That's verses 19b through 22. The second outline is undeniable differences. That's chapter 25, verses 24 through 28. And the third outline is unruly disregard. That is Genesis 25, 29 through 34. Okay, so let's go back to our first set of scriptures here, which is Genesis chapter 25, verse 19b through 23. And the subsection here is two generations. 19b, Abraham begat Isaac, 20, and Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah to wife, the daughter of Bethuel, Serena, of Phanerah, the sister of Laban the Syrian. Verse 21, and Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife because she was barren. And the Lord was entreated of him, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. Let's go to read 22. And the children struggled together within her, and she said, if it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord. Now, let's go back. We see that Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, his wife, that was to be his wife. And in verse 21, and Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife because she was barren. Now, Isaac, that is Abraham's son, Isaac, was to be the son to carry on the heir. He was to be the heir of God's promise, not Abraham's firstborn son, who was Ishmael, but Abraham's son born of Sarah, which was Isaac. So Isaac was the promised son, the promised seed, okay? It was Isaac, not Ishmael, but Isaac. So Isaac knew that he would carry on the covenant promise, okay? Isaac knew this. So Isaac, as 21 says, Rebekah, she was barren. Okay, she was the couple was childless. So as you can imagine, how are they going to carry on the promise that was given to Abraham that he would be the father of many nations if it would end with Isaac? Okay, so just like his father before him with Sarah, Rebekah was barren for many years. It was about 20 years before the son Isaac was born. That is, it was 25 years before Isaac was born, but Isaac and his wife Rebekah was barren, had no children for 25 years. So just like his father. But we look at this, there's a difference here. Isaac did the right thing. He did it the right way, not like his father took matters into his own hands. Remember, Abraham and Sarah took matters into their own hands after the Lord had not blessed them with a child, a son. After many years, Abraham and Sarah took matters in their own hand, and Ishmael was born. But Ishmael was not the promised son. Okay, Isaac was. But with Isaac and his wife Rebekah, they were barren too, and it took 20 years before they had any children, okay? But what did they do? Isaac prayed before the Lord. It said Isaac entreated the Lord for his wife. So instead of Isaac taking matters into his own hands like his father did, he prayed about the situation. And B of 21 said, the Lord entreated of him, and Rebekah, his wife, was conceived after 20 years based on God's timetable, okay? Based on God's timetable, the Lord answered Isaac's prayer, okay? So that's a key to us. It may take a while. If God promises it, you can depend on him to carry it out. As Isaac did it the right way, his wife was barren, and he prayed about the situation. And verse 21 says, the latter part of verse 21, the Lord entreated of him, and Rebekah and his wife Rebekah conceived. Okay, so Isaac knew he was to carry on God's promise. He knew he was the heir of God's promise because he was Abraham's son by Sarah, not the handmaiden as Ishmael was. So he prayed about it because he knew that he was God's promised heir. Okay, let's look at 22. And the children struggled together within her, and she said, if it be so, why am I thus? And she went to inquire of the Lord. 23, and the Lord said unto her, 2 nations are in thy womb, and 2 manner of people shall be separate from thy bowels, and the one people shall be stronger than the other people, and the elder shall serve the younger. So the key is, what is the significance of this struggle, okay? First of all, it tells her that she's gonna have twins, the fraternal twins. You're gonna have twins, and they're gonna represent 2 nations of people. And it also says that the younger, and they call him the younger, that is the second born. Esau was the firstborn of the twin. So he was considered the firstborn. Esau was, whereas Jacob was second to be born. He was not the firstborn. So, and the idea there is that there was certain traditions according to man's tradition, man law, there were certain benefits that followed the firstborn. Okay, there were certain benefits, but as the lesson explained, God reverses the nature of things. He reverses the order of things. God chose the younger twin. He chose Jacob over Esau. It was God's choice. God chose this based on his will, his purpose, his grace, and mercy. Okay, so it was God's choice that that Jacob. It was God's choice that Jacob would be the heir of God's promise. That was God's choice. Okay, so within the womb, it was a struggle for the birthright, and that struggle also characterized the relationship between these brothers' descendants. It says in 22, two nations, as the scripture tells us, Abraham would be the father of many nations. Okay, now Abraham had other sons also, besides Ishmael and Isaac. Abraham did. He had Abraham had many sons. Matter of fact, he had 8 sons. After his wife Sarah died, he married another person. I think is Katrina, I believe it was. He married her, and to that marriage was 6 sons born. So totally Abraham had 8 sons, but the heir of God's promise was Isaac, that is the son of Abraham and Sarah. Okay, so when Rebecca was pregnant, there were 2 nations in her womb. And that struggle characterized the relationship of the descendants of those 2 brothers, that is Jacob and Esau. But Jacob was selected not based on tradition to receive the birthright, not based on tradition. Based on tradition, the birthright rightfully should have went to Esau because he was the firstborn. But God reverses the nature of the order of man for his purpose. It was based on his will, his purpose, God's grace and mercy that Jacob was chosen to be the heir of God's promise. Okay, let's look now at our second outline, undeniable differences. Physically, it says physically, verses 24 and 25. And when her days to be delivered was fulfilled, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red, all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. So Esau was actually the firstborn, first one to come out of the twins. These were fraternal twins, obviously not identical. Okay, and 26 says, and after that came his brother out, and his hand took hold of Esau's heel, and his name was called Jacob. So the struggle for the birthright, okay? And 26b, and Isaac was 80 years old when he bare him. Okay, that's was that 60, 246, yeah, 60. He was 60 years old. Okay, Personality. So they was different physically, and now we get to personality. And the boys grew, and Esau was a cunning hunter, a man of the field, and Jacob was a plain man dwelling in the tents. They were total opposites, okay? And this is the one issue right here, verse 28. This is a mistake that the parents show, and this is a mistake to show this favoritism. 28 says, and Isaac loved Esau because he did eat of his venison, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Now that was a mistake, okay? It's a mistake, and that caused problems between the brothers. And that was the mistake that the parents made. Okay, that was verse 28, actually is basically telling you that, I mean, they were different. They were different. And the idea that the parent showed favoritism, and that's a point for us to understand that that should be a no-no, to showing favoritism, because as it's not going to be covered in this lesson, we're not going to cover in this lesson, that caused a lot of difficulty in the family when that happens, when that favoritism is shown. Now, the next outline, unruly disregard, and that starts at verse 29 and go to verse 34. And Jacob sought pottage, and Esau came from the field, and he was faint. In other words, Esau was a hunter. He was a man of the field. He was an outdoors person, whereas Jacob was tending around the house. He was more attentive to the family issues, okay, family matters, okay. And Jacob was cooking this stew. It's basically a stew. He was cooking this stew, and Esau was hungry, okay. And verse 30 said, and Esau said to Jacob, feed me, I pray thee, with that same red pottage, or that same red stew, for I am faint, and therefore was his name called Edom. And Jacob said, sell me this day thou birthright. Okay, so we go on to 32. And Esau said, behold, I'm at the point to die, and what profit shall the birthright do to me? Okay, that's statement by Esau is telling, well, we're going to talk about Jacob too, but the statement about I'm at the point to die. Now, realistically, okay, unless he hadn't eaten for many, many days, he wasn't going to die. But he wanted to satisfy his flesh immediately. And he was willing to sacrifice, okay, a spiritual blessing, that is the birthright, for something to immediately satisfy his hunger. That tells something about him. He had a lack of appreciation for spiritual things. He said, what good is the birthright when I'm dead? I mean, clearly, you're not going to die because you can't get some stew, okay? But you're willing to sacrifice a spiritual blessing for immediate satisfaction. That's telling. And also in 31, let's talk about Jacob for a minute. Jacob said, sell me this day thy birthright. So Jacob saw an opportunity to take advantage of his brother. Yes, Jacob wronged his brother. Okay. And here is the irony of the whole situation. And Rebekah did not have clean hands either. We're not going to dwell on it much, but Rebekah was in on the plot to deceive, okay, their father, Isaac. Rebekah was in on it. Yeah, she was in on the plot too, as well as Jacob. Jacob saw an opportunity to take advantage of his brother, and he did. However, the irony of it, all of their plans and schemes was unnecessary. In other words, they was planning and plotting and scheming for something that was already his. The subject of the lesson gives us a hint. God chooses the younger twin. God chose Jacob over Esau anyway. Now you might say, well, if Jacob hadn't did what he did, would he got the birthright? Yes, because God chose him based on his will, his purpose, his grace and mercy. So they did not have to scheme in order for Jacob to get the birthright. How would it be done? I don't know, but they did not have to do what they did. And yes, Jacob wronged his brother, okay, but he did not have to take advantage. He took advantage of his brother. He didn't have to do it, okay. They didn't have to do that. God had already promised. God had already chosen Jacob over Esau anyway. Okay. Let's go. What we read 32. Let's read 33. And Jacob said, swear to me this day, and he swore unto him, and he sold his birthright unto Jacob. Okay, so again, that just shows Esau did not appreciate what he had. He had a disregard for spiritual matters, okay? But again, it was unnecessary. It was not necessary for Jacob and his mother Rebekah to scheme to get what God had already chosen for Jacob, okay? And verse 34, then Jacob gave Esau bread and pottage or stew and lentil, and he did eat and drink and rose up and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. So that is the idea. Esau had something of value, and because he did not regard it, okay, he lost it. Okay, that was the whole thing. For something, for immediate, to satisfy his immediate desire. Because as I said, he said, if I don't have some of this stew, I'm gonna die. No, I doubt very seriously he would have died if he didn't get some of that stew. But that just shows that he was willing to give up a spiritual benefit for immediate fleshly gratification, okay, to fulfill his desire. So, and none of that should have happened, but Jacob was God's choice, okay, to be the heir of God's promise. And that is our lesson today. God chooses the younger twin to carry, to receive the birthright and to be the heir of God's promise instead of the older, that is Esau, which that's how it normally would have transpired according to man's order, but God will reverse the order. And this is what he did there. And it was because of his will, his purpose, and his grace and mercy. We'd like to thank you for watching today. We ask you to join us next week for another edition of the Sunday School Review. Thank you.